Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Event Industry News Podcast with me, James Dickson, wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you join today's podcast from. And welcome aboard a first-time guest on the show, talking about something that I suppose is a little bit different to some of the recent subject matter we've had on the podcast. As always, event related, but let's dive into it and find out a little bit more with my guest today, Mr. Andrew Morrow. Andrew, welcome to the podcast. And as I said, I've been deliberately vague at the start there in terms of what we're going to be talking about today. It's something called the Events Club. It is a literal club, a literal facility. Before we get into exactly what it is, why don't we just give our podcast listeners a little bit of context as to who you are, what you do within the industry?
No problem. Firstly, thank you for having me on, James. So I've been in this industry for longer than I care to say, coming up to sort of nearer 25 years. But I can't ever say that I was a caterer or a planner or a florist, etc. What I've done for those 25 years is run venues. So I started off at the Business Design Centre, where I was involved in art and design events, and then I moved over to Old Billingsgate when it was pretty much in its infancy, and spent 3 years there getting it to sort of a bigger name in the world of event venues. Did some really interesting deals there. Did the first Square Venues and Events show. That's really showing my age, so probably going back 18 years, and did a great agreement with Ultimate Experience, which again started that mega run of what they used to do. So 3-4 weeks at Christmas, 3-4 weeks in summer, and that was an incredible thing to be involved with. And then I moved over to a much smaller company that started off quite small with an entrepreneur who had found himself with a venue in central London, didn't know what he was doing. And that was called it was called Marrowbone Place when I got there.
Yeah.
And quite quickly, within sort of 6-7 months, we had our second venue in Mayfair. They both happened to be former churches. And so that was 2. We rebranded to be called One Events. And then over the next few years, we created another 4. So we had 6 at any one time. And it was an interesting time. It was 2008, 2009, going up to when I left in 2020. So we were very much a small to medium venue, very much on the corporate private weddings, ranging, but that middle size venue. So 300 up, that sort of level.
Yeah.
And it was, I suppose, all those years of watching. Like I said before, I'm not a caterer, I'm not a florist, etc. But it was those years and years and thousands of events that I've watched. The key people, the workers. I call them the workers, but it's us, and it doesn't matter if you're an OSA watching a waiter and a waitress who might be at university earning a bit of money on the side, all the way up to senior florists, senior designers, or whatever it may be, and watching them come into a venue. Mainly with big budget events. So we're watching luxury events spending a lot of money. And I just found it fascinating that this group of people that would come into a venue for a day, would work on these luxurious, beautiful, incredible events. And then suddenly they disappear after the event back to their standard office, let's just say, back to their 1-bedroom, back to living at home, whatever it may be. And at the same time, I suppose I was afforded to be invited to the members clubs around London, by maybe even friends or other industries. A lot of the time it wasn't our industry, it was other industries. And I used to just think, this isn't fair. So the people that are on their feet for 18 hours a day, working, they're sort of immersed in this incredible life for the day. And then when the event's over, it's see you later, and back to your normal lives. And at the same time, as I say, I'm going to these members clubs, and I just thought, and this is going back 10, 12 years, and I thought, why can't we be afforded that bit of extra luxury that they're getting? So that's where it sort of started. It deep rooted many years ago, and sort of just leading up to the pandemic, it was definitely something that was now something I really wanted to do. And the pandemic sort of kicked me up behind and said, right, this is it. So I found an investor, and the idea behind the events club sort of took a ride. I kept it quite quiet for a while. And it was one of those things that you always say to yourself, it seems like a good idea. But I couldn't really talk to people about it. I was too worried that someone would say, yeah, it's a really good idea, and I've got 20,000 square feet in the bottom of my venue, and I'm going to do the same thing. I sort of kept it reasonably quiet to more friends that weren't in the industry, a few people that were. And one of the funny thing, a few of them said, yeah, but our industry is so, they don't work together very well with other people. Competitors stay competitors. And what I suppose the pandemic really did for this business is that it's made people want to work together. We were severely kicked around, told to leave, told to go and find other jobs. And whether or not it was an important thing to do before the pandemic, it has really come to fruition now that, and I've now probably spoken to 500, 600, 800 people face to face over the last 3-4 months. And they've ranged from crew all the way up to managing directors, and everyone, they get it within a second. When you hear someone saying, oh, why has no one else thought about this? Then you start to realize actually there's definitely something in this. And I think the excitement when I can speak to people face to face and they are coming back at me with things that I hadn't even thought about yet.
Yeah.
So the events club, because we haven't even really said what the events club is. So the events club.
Well, I was going to say that's the headline now, isn't it? That's it. This is what we built up to. It is called the Events Club, and it's everything that you said. Members club for people who work in the events industry, presumably regardless of what you do in the events industry.
Absolutely. It's meant to be for everyone in the events industry, and I'll probably keep on going from different subjects here. But what was interesting was having this journey and speaking to landlords and investors who they cemented one of the reasons that I'm doing this. No one has an idea about our industry, which I just found so interesting. And one of the big examples was an investor I saw. I gave the example of, the lighting designer that did that event for you a few weeks ago. And he said, yeah. I said, that he worked on the Olympics? And the shock, of this guy's face was like, but he's just a lighting person. It made no sense to him that he could have a serious, part in the world. So that was one of the things. And then I suppose landlords as well saying to me, and investors actually saying, why would you limit it to just one industry? And I kept on hearing that. It's the same thing. I was like, but I know my industry so well that firstly, I'm not taking venues that could take 100,000 capacities. I'm taking small venues, small locations, small buildings that can do 300-400 at a time as far as the events part of it. And they still didn't get it. So I said, well, that's my USP. My USP is building the community together, giving them a tangible space. And that is something that I've really tried to concentrate on. It's a community space, a hub, although I don't like the word hub, but it is a hub for us who can come together, that can use it as a space, whether or not it's throughout the day, running from one meeting to the next. And the idea is to have 4, 5, 6 locations at one point. So you're planning your days around where you may be able to step into an events club, whether or not you're starting your day with a coffee and a croissant, having somewhere to print a floor plan, then you go off to your first meeting, and then you're back there later on, getting your head down and actually doing 2 hours work before you then go to your next afternoon meeting, for example. And, there are a plethora of flexible workspaces around London and around the country now, but, I'm trying to do something which is severely aimed at our industry. And I use the emergency service as an expression sometimes, because we have facilities there that I think actually a lot of offices and places should have. So I'm desperate, we want to put a creche in there. Why do I want to put a creche in these places? Because, I've been a father for the last 5-6 years. I understand how important it is that you can get to a meeting in case if teachers go on strike, which is quite political at the moment, a hot topic, or your babysitter is ill, or you don't have a family member to look after them. Why can't you return to work after 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Go to that team meeting that you're desperate to go to. So adding things like that, and then having something like that, I realized that not everyone is a parent, but then people have dogs. So I said, well, let's put a dog creche on site. And again, it's funny when I was speaking to people, the people that don't have kids go, oh, I love the idea that you're going to have something like that. And we laid down some foundations of the principles of the business. And then what we're trying to do is speak to founding members, and founding members is what we're taking applications for at the moment. We're not taking any money at the moment. What we want to do is speak to founding members and say what do they think is useful. So one of the things that has really been a big hit from founding members who have applied so far is the rest pods. So we're having rest pods in there. We can't, unfortunately, have sleep pods because the buildings that we've taken don't allow that currently. But the more people we speak to, the more I realise that that's something that maybe location 3 will have, an option for people to put their heads down. I mean, crew members is something I'd like to talk about as well, is because that's the reason that I created rest pods. But then that sort of was highlighted that everyone wants a rest pod. But crew, I would watch for years and years, crew turn up at my venues at 6 o'clock in the morning. We've got to remember, these crew are people that go up ladders, that are more likely to injure themselves than anyone else. And yet they are the ones that go from one shift that finishes at 2 o'clock at, I'll say, the Science Museum or the Victorian Albert, whoever it may be, and they will have nowhere, I should say, to go for 4 hours until they're on site at 6 a.m. And I have seen thousands of these people look dreadful and terrible. When I asked where they have been, they would say nowhere. They've wandered the streets. So that was my first reason to have rest pods. So they would be able to have a safe location across London where they can turn up, they can have a shower, they can have something to eat, they can put their feet up, they can watch a film, they can have a coffee, and they can have a bacon sandwich. And when they leave at 5 o'clock in the morning, they will feel refreshed. So I'm trying to put the onus on the responsibility to crewing agencies and general agencies from that point of view. We're trying to get to a point where the events club becomes, the vision is you go for a job interview and you say, are you a member of the events club? Because my last business was, and I love being there because it helped. We're talking about the word, we use the word supercharge. It helps supercharge their days, and whether or not that is being able to turn up during the day to get some work done properly, and not sit in a Pret or a Starbucks, or turn up at 9 o'clock at night and have something to eat when nowhere else is really open. So I could carry on talking, but I don't know if you want to try and get a question in.
There's a few things to pick out then, and something that you mentioned is a comment that was made to you about why would you open a club for such a sort of a small industry or a niche industry. I forget the exact word you used, but that this is clearly the misconception of the events industry by people who don't understand how the industry works is not just that it's not small, not just that it's not niche, but it's not just people walking around with clipboards telling a florist where to put flowers.
That's one of the things I say, but nothing wrong with people walking around with clipboards.
Absolutely not. But
that's exactly how I say it to people. It's not just a clipboard person,
Exactly, and the organizer, the person pulling the strings, absolutely is a critical part of it. But when you look at the events industry, and this podcast, as an example, every episode is completely different and not necessarily relevant to every single person who works in the industry. We might be talking about diversity and inclusion in the events industry one week. We might be talking about AV. We might be talking about conferences. We might be talking about live events, music festivals, whatever it may be. It is so diverse, just in terms of what the word events cover. That's a wedding, that's a music concert, that's a dog show, that's a village fair, that's a business conference in a hotel just off the M40, and when you look at how many people are then required to run it, it stands to reason that if you look at the sort of the classic club industries for the sort of the members clubs, law, finance, banking, all of these sort of highbrow industries have got their members clubs, haven't they, in London, where people can go and do exactly what you described. But when you actually look at the mechanics of how our industry works, when people work, and that a lot of these people will probably have offices and bases that are outside of London. They're constantly commuting backwards and forwards, aren't they? If we look
Absolutely.
at London as the example. So to have a base or somewhere where they can go to make that time just a little bit more logistically efficient is a great thing.
Exactly. I'd like to sort of highlight the point that you said about other clubs. So one of the factors of this is that, I'm not saying everyone, but we can't afford to go to these clubs. You know, a crewing member, or, you know, a lot of us can't afford to go to a Soho House. And even if you could afford to go to a Soho House, you know, it's becoming an expense-driven business. So what I mean by that is that you can go there, but, you know, do you want to spend £50 on lunch? The only people that tend to are the people that then can go and hand that receipt in and claim it back. So I'm trying to provide something that is not like that. I want I keep on referring to crew, but, you know, it's not just crew. But I want someone like a crew member to be able to turn up and find an area within one of the locations that they are comfortable in, and that they can, you know, have a pint compared to someone else that's going to order a cocktail and they feel really comfortable doing it because it's part of their own. And the only way that I could see doing that was subsidizing the business with a venue. So, you know, please God, thankfully, hopefully, I should say, the business as the events club will be able to stand on its own 2 feet. But could I say that from day one? I'm not sure. So just to give you an idea, you know, when you're talking about paying thousands for some for some members clubs, we're talking about £500 a year for a membership. And I'm hoping, the idea is that corporate people do buy those memberships for their employees. And we really are trying to do something for the industry. This isn't about us just saying, let's try and sign up as many members as we can. You know, again, I'm having this going back and forth with founding members about exactly how we're going to play it. And we're currently on the version 5, it probably is now, but the membership allows a company to buy an amount of memberships. That's for their company. So if you've got a 20-person company, you only need to buy 5, for example, and we will allow 5 of those 20 in at any one point. But even if the 6th person turns up, we're not going to turn them away. They get signed in as a member. As a guest. And then should that happen every week or every day, then the company will get an email saying, we'd like you just to upgrade your membership to 6 because we're finding. And the truth is, we want people to stop going to Pret. We want them to come to us. So
well, I was going to say, how many event meetings, and I don't know, because I know how many I've been in, you know, oh, we'll meet at that coffee shop on the corner, you know, the one, yeah, great, I'll see you in there. And you go in there and that coffee shop is getting the 15 or 20 quid that you spend in there over the course of a 2-hour meeting. You know, if I'm not saying we need to take the business back, but, you know, all of those people are trying to basically have very, very important meetings about events that have got probably quite large budgets, and they're doing it in a not-for-purpose space.
Absolutely. Whether or not I can name brands on this show, I'm sure you're fine with that.
Well,
you know, we all walk into these places and you just, they're crowded with big meetings going on. And I am calling out to the industry. I'm trying to do something really good for the industry. I've been in it for so long now that I think it deserves it. I think the pandemic really shot us all in the arm. I think we are trying to get back to where we were, but it's hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for a while yet. But I'm calling on the industry to, when it's open, to actually come and use it. We want people to come and utilize the space, spend that money instead of going to Starbucks. I would promise you that the quality of the drinks and the food will be better, and the same sort of cost. We're not going to be a Soho House cost. And again, sorry for referring to Soho House the whole time. But the initiatives that we're putting together, we want people to fall in love with being here. And I don't say that lightly, because that's the truth. It will help. Everything it's a bit of a circle. We want the industry to be our sales tools. We want them to like being here. So, we're doing events at the moment, and it's funny, I've been out the game for 2 years because I've been trying to start this up. And now, while I'm doing events at the Belgravia, which was formerly Il Battaccio back in the day, for those people that are that old that they can remember it, and then it was One Belgravia. But even watching, crew go out and buy 100, or the team building the event, buying 100 coffees throughout the day at Pret, and I'm just seeing these Pret bottles and things everywhere. So I really, really feel so strongly that it's something that will benefit the industry. So yeah.
Yeah, and having their own space. Well, something again, just to pick up on a point about the pandemic. How many businesses do we all know who decided during the pandemic that actually working from home is quite a good thing, and we can get rid of our office space as a result of it. So there's a lot of event businesses now and agencies and planners who might have a 4, 5, 6 person team working for the business who don't have an office space now. They don't have a necessarily a fixed base of operations.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm seeing a lot of that.
yeah.
I had my initial vision. My vision keeps on changing every few seconds because you make one realization, then you get to the next one very quickly. So it was all aimed at people from London at the beginning, and then quickly that went to, no, what am I talking about? People coming into London from around the country every day. And then I realised people coming from Europe for the rest of the, a lot of the time. So we have done some PR around that, and it's been really interesting because I'm getting calls and I'm having Zoom interviews and meetings, which I say with companies around Europe and around the rest of the UK, saying, "Are you going to have this? Can I?" And because when you speak to people face to face, they get it. It's really difficult to explain what we're trying to do on a website, and having 30-minute Zooms with people saying, yeah, by the end of it, we're signing up to 5 people. It's a really nice thing to have, but I can't have 30-minute meetings with hundreds and hundreds of companies. So hopefully that this will be able to speak to people directly.
Absolutely. In terms of, I think what's really important is maybe to really sort of describe and paint the picture so that people can maybe imagine it as they're listening to this today or watching this, how the internal space is going to manifest itself. I think people would maybe ask you, right, how are you going to have, meeting rooms? Are there going to be communal areas, cafes, bars, pods where I can sit on my laptop and work? How are you hoping that the internal design and layout of the venues is going to imagine itself?
The first thing to say about that is each location has to be designed specifically. So the one we've got 2 at the moment, which are going to be launched later on in the year, quarter 3. And the one is, we've got one in Belgravia and we've got one in Angel. They are absolutely completely the other end of the scale to each other. So the one in Angel is an industrial space, brand new building, so it's great, but completely industrial. Whereas the one in Belgravia is your typical Soho House type of feel.
Yeah.
So that's across 6 floors. And the design of it is, I can quickly run through that one. So as you approach on the ground floor, you've got a really lovely restaurant, which is the type of space that you could visit if you've got 30 minutes to grab your coffee and your croissants, quickly go through some notes, and then go to Victoria or the new Peninsula Hotel that's being built next door. And then when you go to the next floor, which is aimed at flexible workspace, you've got a whole floor of up to 60, 70 seating space, and everyone thinks a bit mad. And the reason I'm doing this part of the floor is that's a non-disturbing floor. And it hit me again, speaking to founding members, that if someone's coming and they've got 2 hours to work, they want to work for 2 hours. They don't want to be sold to. They don't want to, unfortunately, have to say hello to 17 people that they know. So that is the floor. It's all about non-disturbance. If you know,
a quiet car on the train.
Exactly. If you know the film Fight Club, there's only one rule in the events club. And so I'm going to stick to that. It's really important because I think people, I don't want to have those phone calls saying, Andrew, really love being there, but I'm not getting any work done. So that is a floor dedicated to that. And then the floor above is a lot more occasional seating where you can actually have your meetings and chats and team meetings, etc. And then as you get to the top floor, it's a much more evening sort of space where it is very much after work. It's actually only going to open after work. There's a screening room up there, which during the day will be aimed at suppliers filmmakers, photographers, so they could use it as a space where they can show or show their potential clients their work, or even finished edits. Once they finished the wedding, they come to a central London venue and they get to see it in a lovely space. And then we've got in the basement, we've got a production kitchen. We'll have a tasting room. Again, another thing that's really important when I've been speaking to caterers, that they actually get to use a space in central London to invite clients to, rather than taking them back to their units perhaps. Lockers, the rest pods, showers, and that's about it. Sorry, meeting rooms as well. So yeah, bookable meeting rooms.
I love the idea of the space where it is work only, because that's something that people will understand really easily. Once you explain that to a new member, if you see anybody on that floor that don't disturb them, because they're there for a reason. They're working, and it's almost like that lovely sort of nod of appreciation, that nod of knowing that you get from somebody. You might see somebody that you might exchange eye contact with them a second, but they know that you're there working and you've got something important that you need to achieve.
Exactly. I think, and again, we're ironing over a lot of things, and I'm trying to iron over those things before. I'm sorry I keep on saying about founding members, but that's why it's really important for us. We've given some ridiculous benefits to founding members. And I'll give you some stats. We're on about 450 applications so far, and that's a number of categories of people. So that's anything from a freelancer signing up as a one person, all the way up to, we've got people signing up to 20, for example, and that's might be an events company that has a lot of people. So that's where we are really. It's trying to carve out over the next few months exactly what the business needs to be for a lot of people. I think I've probably read many business books over my lifetime saying you can't be everything to everyone, but I'm trying to break that rule a little bit and say, well, let's try and offer as much as we can to the events industry, because I think they need it, or we need it, I should say.
And as daft a question as may sound, will the events club be available for events, or are you going to keep it exclusively and solely for what its intended purpose is?
So every site, I was quite big on this, that every site we take over will have an event space part of it. So the one in Belgravia, it's a separate entrance. It's always the venues we have, or the venues I've always been involved with, have been exclusive. So it's all about taking a building for a day, and that is the clients for the day, and they can do what they want with it. So very different from a hotel where you can have people walking through the lobby. And this is all about exclusive event spaces. So we have exclusive entrance separate from the events club. So yeah, it's a big USP about what I'm trying to do. And yeah, so yeah.
In terms of the catering, the sort of the in-house sort of side of things, the food and beverage offering, how far down the line are you in terms of sorting that? As chefs, staff, menus and things like that? What stage are you at the moment?
But before I forget, what I do want to talk about is preferred lists. So sorry, it's because it's part of that conversation. So I've always ran venues that have had lists. The lists started, I think, back in the days of sort of the 70s, 80s, where you had some of the big institutions, and it's understandable. I have to say, it's understandable why some people need a list. But I can't wholeheartedly say that I'm trying to do something for the events community. I'm trying to make sure that everyone has an option to work, and then say, oh, and here's a closed list. So I'm doing something quite novel, I think, and everyone's quite appreciative of. There are no lists. Anyone that is actually a caterer or an actual production company, actual florist, will be able to work in these spaces. The side caveat to that, however, is that at one point, as soon as we are open for the events club, they will have to be members of the events club. They could sign up to one membership, which is only £500, but that will go hand in hand with that. So I'm trying to say that this industry needs to be a bit more open. There's too many venues that don't necessarily need to have lists. I'm trying to be very transparent. So we may have an advertised list in the future because it might be important at that stage, but I'm trying to have a space that's accessible to all. I mean, all the venues that I've ever run have a occupancy of probably anywhere between 38 and 45%. So we're talking about venues that are empty for 50, 60% of the year. So I'm trying to give all members an opportunity to use those spaces. So they are busy. So whether or not an agency wants to try and drive recruitment, for example, they can come to us and say, we'd like to take one of the spaces to do something fun and interesting, but in return for that, they're using it as a bit of a drive for recruitment. We're going to be putting on as much as we can really for the industry, as far as seminars and talks, all free. That's the idea, that the community is putting those on. So if you are in health and safety as your business, we'd love, as a member, we'd love them to be able to come and do talks. We'd love first aiders, we'd love SIA security. Whatever it is, we'd like to be able to provide that for the industry.
In-house CPD.
Absolutely.
Perfect, isn't it? Timeline wise and application wise, you mentioned that you're taking applications at the moment. What is the timeline for the sort of the opening of the events under the Events Club brand, and will there be a grand opening as such? Are the two venues that you mentioned going to have sort of official launch events?
Yes, so I mean they are running at the moment. They're doing events at the moment, but yeah, we are going to do a big launch when the Events Club opens as one big picture, and that will be sort of realistically September sort of time.
Excellent. Okay, and presumably applications are still open at the moment. If people will give out the contact details and a bit of website and stuff, but people can find out more and apply.
Yeah, so applications for founding members are completely open at the moment. We are going to close it at some stage. It's been interesting trying to explain to people what those benefits are. And I've had caterers that I know very well, that I've known for 20 years, saying, yeah, of course, I'll sign up. And then, I'll look at the list and see that they haven't signed up a few days later. And I won't go into the benefits now because everyone can look on the website. But then I've had people send me a WhatsApp message saying, oh, I've got a client, etc. I said, yes, in order to get that benefit, you just need to sign up. And they've, straight away they've signed up. So it's been a bit of a do it now type of scenario for the last couple of months. But there's nothing to pay. We're not taking any money. All we're taking is founding members' applications. And then when we can then go back to people and slot in those appropriate people. And the reason we're doing that is that I don't want to have a space that is overrun on day one. So when I say splitting those up, we're going to have a number of crewing companies, a number of caterers, a number of florists, so that they use the space throughout the 24-hour period differently. And only after circa 3 months of data will we be able to say, yeah, we can open up another 50 spaces, another 100, another 500, whatever it may be. So that's the idea, and that's why we want people to get in quickly before they say, "Oh, I didn't realise you were closing the list." So that's I'd like people to sign up ASAP, and then they will always have the flexibility to decide once they've been accepted whether or not they want to take it or not.
Absolutely. We've been talking on the podcast today to Mr. Andrew Morrow, the founder of the Events Club. Andrew, if people want to find out a bit more, you've mentioned that they can go to the website and get all these benefits. What is the website that they need?
So it's www.the-eventsclub.com. So I think that's over your screen at the moment.
Absolutely. Anybody watching the video of today's podcast, it's on the screen now. If you're listening to the podcast today, the-eventsclub.com is where you need to go, and you'll get all the information on there. Andrew, thanks very much for hopping on the podcast today and taking the time to tell us about this exciting venture, and the very best of luck with it. No doubt you'll keep us informed as to sort of any further developments, and
of course.
keep us in the loop. We'd love to find.
You'll have a London home as soon as we're open.
Fantastic. Of course, if you want to check out our own home, everybody, if you're listening to today's podcast via your podcast platform on your device, don't forget that you can go to eventindustrynews.com on your browser. You can check out video versions of all of our podcasts, as well as find out the latest news features, special supplements that are all available on eventindustrynews.com. The Sustainable Event Buyer's Guide was released just a few weeks ago on Event Industry News. The 2023 edition is out there now. Sustainability, huge topic on and within the events industry at the moment, and going hand in hand with the launch of the new Sustainable Buyer's Guide is the launch of the Event Sustainability Live show that will run at Excel London alongside Event Tech Live later on this year. That's Event Sustainability Live. If you go to eventindustrynews.com, links to Event Tech Live and the brand new Event Sustainability Live show can be found on there. So a little shout out for that newly launched event there. Our thanks once again to today's guest, Mr. Andrew Morrow from the Events Club, for telling us all about this exciting venture. And it brings us neatly and nicely to the end of today's episode of the podcast. We'll see you all again in the next edition. Thanks very much, everybody. Goodbye.